Isabelle Pierrotin is chairwoman of the French gambling authority ANJ, and she joins us now. Thank you for joining us, Isabelle.
Thank you.
The first question would be, what are the dangers to consumers as the industry becomes more digitized?
Well, the dangers for consumers is to be overwhelmed by gambling without paying real attention to the risk of the gambling. And all the more that the advertising pressure is rather high on the consumers. So our office as regulator is to make sure the consumer is aware of his expenses, the environment of gambling, and make good decisions in order to have a safe gambling.
Is it simply a case of making the consumer more aware, or is there more of an onus on the provider?
I think it's a mixed responsibility. Of course, the end user, the player must be aware and must be given tools to monitor its own play. But on the other hand, the operators should respect their legal obligations, in particular as regards problematic gambling, be able to identify players that are turning problematic and offering a service to these players. And in France, it's a new obligation, and it's a very important obligation for us, and we are about to publish a kind of kit to help the operators to enforce this obligation. For instance, defining parameters to identify these problematic gamblers.
Is it too simplistic to say it's a case of allowing the consumer to spend too much or lose too much without putting them off completely?
Well, we all know that gambling is a complex activity. On one hand, it can be an entertainment activity. On the other hand, it can be a kind of, not slavery activity, but you can be overwhelmed by the gambling. So the idea is to really put each part of the ecosystem in front of its responsibility. So the gambler must be given real tools, operational tools, for instance, a dashboard to see what are the real expenses he's conducting for gambling. And the operators must face their responsibilities. They just can't say it's only the player's choice. We know that the offer conditions sometimes the demand. So the operators must have these obligations. They must respect this obligation as regards problematic gamblers. They must develop some kind of action plan to fight against addiction, in particular towards the minors. So there are various of tools that are in the hands of the operators.
I mean, you mentioned addiction there, but what are the other sort of key subjects that regulators need to address? Perhaps the three key subjects.
Three key subjects. One, for sure, is advertising. The idea is to have a more responsible advertising, because we have been surrounded by advertising during the last years, in particular as regards the Euro tournament and the World Cup of football. And so we have asked the professionals, the operators, to de-intensify the advertising pressure, and they have committed themselves through the signature of charters. So it's important because it shows that the industry is understanding it has to reduce the advertising pressure. So we'll see if the signature of this co-regulatory framework is enough, or if we want to ask for new additional measures. So advertising is the first subject. The second subject for sure is innovation. Innovation, we must keep up with innovation as regulator. We just can't see innovation as always a danger, because innovation, of course, raises new subjects, but also it gives us new solutions. Artificial intelligence, for instance, to identify problematic gamblers, you see. So we have to deal with that. And the third issue, let me see, I would say more cooperation between the regulators. because I strongly believe that we can find solutions by being inspired by our neighbors. And it's very important for me to be in a place like ICE today, because we are discussing between regulators, we are comparing what this type of solution is implementing in one country, and we can get better ideas than if we were just alone in our country.
And a couple of questions about ICE generally. How important is ICE to the industry in terms of sharing ideas and knowledge?
Well, for the industry, I don't know. For the regulators, it's a good laboratory, and it's my second time here. And again, this year, I feel that it's very important to be able to benchmark what we do in our country, see what are the other solutions that are experienced in other countries. So it's a good market for regulators too.
All right, well, Isabelle, thank you very much for joining us
Thank
at
you.
ICE Falque.
Thank you.
Thank you.